And this should have been an item.
Okay.
And so she's going to speak during public comment time. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Recording.
All right, you guys ready? All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Zachary Hilton.
Here.
Tom Reedy.
Here.
Patrick Scott.
Here.
Michael McCullough.
Here.
Chad Reader.
Here.
Commission Secretary's report on posting of the agenda.
Today's agenda was posted on January 24th, 2020 at 3:11 p.m.
All right, next up is ceremonial items. This is awards and presentations. The Bicycle Pedestrian Commission Monthly Award acknowledging Scott Otteson, who's the principal of El Roble Elementary. I'll come meet you right down over there. You have it on here. You got it. All right. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Mr. Scott Otteson. He's a Gilroy resident and El Roble Elementary principal. Scott, and he's the El Roble Elementary principal. I first met Scott when I petitioned El Roble to allow my daughter Avery to enter TK. I wrote to him that I promised to be a great parent volunteer and that as a firefighter, I'd have plenty of time off to help out at school. Like most TK and kinder parents, I was eager to volunteer and see where I could help. On one of the first days at school, we noticed a promotion for Walk and Roll Wednesdays. I asked for the parent volunteer running it why they had to promote such an event. I thought it was great to see this until I was told it was because parents over the last few decades were choosing to drive their kids to school. This has a huge side effect on public health, traffic, pollution, lack of mass transit users, and kids' independence. Allowing safe routes to school programs to come into the schools starts in the principal's office. And Scott is one of the principals that understood the benefits of passing this along to our youth. By next year, I took over the Safe Routes to School program as a parent coordinator and wanted to see how much farther we could take the program. Scott was the first principal in the school district to allow the kids at their lunch recess on Walk and Roll Wednesdays to ride their bikes around the dirt track. And of course, there was yard duties watching over them. What Scott didn't know is that this would not only gain attraction for to make more kids ride their bikes to school, but he was also doing this exact curriculum that Specialized Bicycle Outright program was doing for the middle schools across the nation. Outright's primary focus on three key areas: primary scientific research, school-based cycling programs, and the creation of cycling communities. The aim is to increase accessibility to cycling through both fun and sustainable school cycling programs. And through these programs, along with the research, we're advancing the understanding of how riding bikes can help improve the social, emotional, and physical well-being of children, with a particular focus on those with learning differences like ADHD. When our commission, along with Solar Sauna Middle School PE, applied for the Specialized Outright grant, they asked if the kids would be allowed to ride off campus. Many school districts did not allow this, and we quickly pointed out Scott's successful program. Last year, myself and other commissioners from this commission, along with Specialized Bikes, took the kids out on their first ride off campus on the trails at Christmas Hill Park. Scott even takes time to join me on one of my bike trainings down 3rd Street to school. So Scott, this is the effect that you have on our community. It's just one of the many reasons why you're being recognized tonight by the City of Gilroy's Bicycle Pedestrian Commission for an individual from the Gilroy community that strives to make Gilroy a better place in regards to bicycle and pedestrian activities. So mahalo and congrats on your retirement. Come on up, we're going to take a photo. And I think Avery wants to get in this photo too.
Come on.
There we go. You're in the middle.
Right in the middle.
You always have to have Sean though. That mention he's a little bit.
No,
It's
some
kind of
look
like
really
like
small.
tiny. Everything up here.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take one more. 1, 2, 3.
Intruder.
Yeah, come on.
Go.
Okay, ready? Say bicycle.
Bicycles.
Oh shoot, wait, I have it on video.
I was gonna say bicycle.
Hold on, don't say bicycle yet. Hold on. Oh my gosh, I lost it.
Give me sharp.
Okay, now say bicycle.
Bicycles.
Here, I have a little gift for you.
Oh yeah.
It's not.
Is that training wheel?
It's not.
Oh,
It's
that's
not
amazing.
amazing.
Thank
Oh,
you.
maybe it is. Oh, I know. I've never seen that before. It's like,
That's a special gift.
let's know you.
Thank you guys.
My 30 seconds.
You have more than 30
I
seconds.
don't want more, but I just wanted to thank you for that nice recognition. As far as the whole bicycle commissioning, it's great what you guys are doing. Why I'm mainly involved with trying to get kids the right bikes is it drives me crazy to see how many parents drop off their kids and they only live like half a mile away. And I, like probably most of you, rode miles and miles to school. In fact, I was telling some of my students the other day, when I was in 10th grade, we just moved to Fort Dallas. I didn't know anybody. It's a very bike-friendly community. I got my first Schwinn 10-speed, rode my bike to school every day, even with a broken arm. So I tell those stories. Kids don't believe it, like you walk 10 miles to school through a snowstorm and all that. But I think it's great to see what you're doing, and I'm all for kids riding their bikes to school. And we do still have bike races and things at recess. A few injuries once in a while. The guys want to go faster, but thanks for what you're doing for the community. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my favorite student.
Bye, you guys. Next up is presentations to the commission. This is public comment by members of the public on items not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission. And I don't think we have any speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Redine. I'm the chair of Gilroy 150, which is the committee that's set up for our sesquicentennial this year. Gilroy, as we see, on March 12th, will turn 150 years old. And on March 14th, this Saturday, we are having a family funding event. And we are asking all the different boards, and commissions if they would be interested in participating. And there is an email, Sean, you're on it, for a possible bicycle ride. But if there's any ways that you guys would like to participate in this family fun day, it will be on Saturday, March 14th from 11 to 2. It could be a booth, anything. And when I was walking the grounds with Shauna, we were thinking actually over in front of the library, in front of the large bicycle rack would be an awesome spot for you guys to have a booth. And part of this is to celebrate Gilroy's history, but to also celebrate our future as well as a city. And so we're trying to integrate all the different kinds of, the different aspects and different facets of the city, but also some from the past and the present. but also to showcase all of the different boards and commissions that we have with the city. So we are asking if there's any way that you guys would like to participate. It is open. So I know this is only for, public, that it's not something you guys can really discuss. So, but I can send you an email. Zach has my email. And if you're interested in learning more about it, please feel free to email me, or also we have Gilroy150.com. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Next up is presentations to the commission. It's Valley Transportation Authority Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee report. You guys have the packet, or inside the packet you have her report. She's not able to be here tonight. She's traveling for work. Are there any public comments or any comments up here about the?
So I have one comment. I read through the material provided in the agenda packet regarding the presentation. I'm saddened to hear that the BTA is considering getting rid of her commission. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that?
I can understand why you might say you're sad about it, but I don't know how to comment about it currently.
All right.
Yeah, I don't really either.
I haven't personally been to one of the meetings, but I've appreciated getting those updates in the week. We have, Carolyn or somebody there representing us and bringing the information back, from the, so that we can be aware of it, and the public can be aware of it.
That's the biggest thing that I can think of. That's a loss.
That. So I just wanted to let it be publicly known that they are considering that this time. All right.
Well said. Any members from the public wish to comment? All right, seeing none. So that was a received report and comment. Next up is number 7, consent calendar. And then, so we'll just take off I that's on there. So if I could just get a motion to accept the consent calendar items A through H.
Motion to accept the consent calendar items A through H.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Consent calendar passes. For orders of the day, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to move up item 9, new business A, City of Gilroy draft bicycle parking ordinance, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we'll do is myself, and I'll let Hippolito introduce himself as well. He's from the City of Gilroy, the building official. And what he's going to do is just review state codes and where we currently sit today, like if a project were to come through, residential and commercial side. And then what we'll do is we'll work our way from there. And we're not going to go through the entire ordinance, but I'll give you sort of a background on thoughts and stuff like that, and the story behind that.
So good evening. My name is Hipólito. I'm the building official for the city of Gilroy. Zachary invited me here tonight just to talk about some of the codes that we adopted this year and the codes that we did not adopt. So your form may look a little different than the one I have here in front of me. I just pulled out the code language itself. The most important thing to focus on here is non-residential mandatory measures. So you'll have one that says non-residential mandatory measures. And on the second page, it'll say residential voluntary measures. So I'm going to start on the mandatory measures. This is what we adopted this year with the California Building Code as part of the standard adoption package. And this kind of dictates what we currently are allowed to enforce as far as the bike parking regulations. So starting at 5.106.4, bicycle parking, this is where we get the authority from the California Building Standards Commission. And it says, everything that's in section 103 shall comply with 5.106.41, which goes down and lays out what are the requirements for bicycle parking. So when you look at the 0.4.1, which is right about here, it goes on to state that unless we have adopted a local ordinance or whichever is stricter, you shall comply with these requirements. So any developer that meets the requirements of being a non-residential building has to meet these requirements here for short-term parking and long-term parking. I believe you guys are familiar with these codes, so I don't want to go through and read every single one. But basically, the short-term parking requirement is based on number of visitor parking. So a percentage of it. So 5% of bicycle parking is going to be for, depending on how many vehicle parking spaces you have, okay, with a minimum of 2. Okay. Now, long-term parking is a little bit different. It sets a requirement also, but it also sets the location for them. So for new buildings with tenant spaces that have 10 or more tenant occupants, that's kind of the key. You'll have to provide secure bicycle parking for 5% of the tenant occupant vehicular parking spaces with a minimum of 1. Okay. And then it goes on to describe, anything above and beyond or additions and alterations. So for additions and alterations, that add 10 or more tenant occupant vehicular parking spaces, then they need to provide 5% of the parking. It's pretty standard setup. The area where there's, we did not adopt, and I think it was something that came up with Zach, was when you have residential or multifamily park developments, there is no parking requirement. And that's because it's currently voluntary measure. So a developer can add parking, bicycle parking, and some have gone out of the way and added this. But it's not a requirement that the planners would say, you need to meet this minimum requirement of bicycle parking for this project, because it doesn't meet the requirement of being commercial. So when you look in the back of that sheet to the residential voluntary measures, you'll see that it has all these little requirements, but none of them are adopted by the city of Gilroy because it's not part of the standard adoption package as being a mandatory requirement. So these are voluntary measures, and we cannot force developer to comply with these. And if you want to go through it, you can read every single one of these, but I think you could do that on your own.
Yeah. And there's no incentives in the code currently for anything like, remove a vehicle space and you can add this.
No.
Okay.
No. Currently,
The code is just strictly.
the code is strictly for the mandatory measures. It's based on parking spots. So if you have 100 parking spots, at 5% would have to be short-term or long-term parking.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no incentive if we say, let's get rid of one parking. And that's kind of difficult to get rid of parking. The only incentive that there is in the code is for clean air vehicles or accessible parking spots. Now the code is allowing you to count even the hatched area because we're going to smaller parking lots and smaller lots. And so that's the only incentive there is.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think that a bicycle would be considered a clean vehicle.
Not yet. We're getting close to there, but it's not yet.
So, so that's, the only teeth we have, or when we're being, we're regulatory authorities, this is what we can enforce and only the sector currently.
And so that commission, how often do they meet and update these codes?
Every 3 years.
And how is that process
So
from like the local level to the commission?
they have open boards, and you go there, you do your presentation, and you say, hey, we want, more stricter requirements for parking, bicycle parking.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they get included into the code.
Okay.
So for example, the PCAP, I sit on the Physically Access Challenge board.
Mhm.
And so what they've done in the accessibility community is they have a pretty strong advocacy group. And so that's how you end up with more parking, accessible parking spots. You end up with more like doorways, more access. You're providing more access to these. And so the bicycling community needs to get with the state, get with a senator or your assembly person, and have them push what your agenda is, right? Because you're basically a special interest And you need to get support to adopt either a Senate bill that requires, instead of being a voluntary measure, to be a mandatory measure at the state level. At the local level, you have the ability to go through that process and get eventually your council to adopt an ordinance, right? So those are the two paths. At the state level, you're going to work with your legislative community. Typically, that's done through big organizations, right? A bike-friendly organization. Sacramento has one, right? And so you push your agenda and then bring it into code so that all the cities in the state of California that adopt the standard code language would have to come meet this requirement, like this one here. The non-residential mandatory measures, we're required to adopt that.
Okay. So the cities have to because I remember I watched you when you did the fire codes, building codes.
Those are reach codes. So, for example, if I would receive direction from council that goes to the city administrator, that goes to my director, that goes to me and says, we want you to bring this to council, then I work on that.
Got it.
And then the guys
To adopt it.
Yes or no, we want to put more requirements on developers. So like the electrical vehicle charging stations, they said, no, we don't think our community is ready for that. We'll let the developers put it in. That's basically what they say to residential developers. Let's let them make that decision at this point. But we haven't taken it to council.
Okay, understood. Does anybody have any questions about this before we move on to the ordinance?
Yeah, just one. So the residential voluntary measures, how does that come about when it's strictly voluntary? Is that due to opposition or other factors?
No, sometimes inside the voluntary measures typically start off like, for example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like gray water, right? So recycling of your water in your house, that started as a voluntary. And slowly as it gets more support, more awareness, it becomes part of the code.
So it's a process leading towards more traction and hopefully going to mandatory.
Correct, when it has support.
So the next step would be mandatory?
If the Building Standards Commission on the next code cycle swaps that from voluntary to mandatory.
As simple as that.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. So I have the draft up there that it was on the Google internet, so we can reference it if anybody wants to reference it. I certainly don't want to go through the whole entire thing, but I'm sure everybody prepared ahead of time. So if there's anything specific that jumps out that you think should be changed or altered or looked into, we have two professionals here to also guide us through this. I can tell you that the history of why this came about is when since I've been on the commission, we've been reviewing residential developments, and they've all had some element of bike parking, whether it's Alexander Station, Lewis Street Apartments, internal long-term parking. I thought it was a normal, everyday thing. And a lot of times developers would come here and they would say, well, what do you think about this? And we would say, that's great. It'd be more user-friendly if you could put it in this location. What I didn't know is that's all being subjective, right? That's just this current commission talking to a developer with how we feel. With the new, like SB 330 that's for the next 5 years, everything needs to be objective. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to draft something now, is so that we don't no longer have to play this game of, can we see that development? Can we give input on where we think this bike rack should be, or tell them don't have this bike rack? Because last August, when I was reviewing, when we provided a safe routes to school report on one property, when I'm reading through the plans, one of the planners asked, this is all great, show us where the bike parking is. And then the response back was, show us where the code is. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, what? They don't have to? That's when we figured out it's voluntary. So it's perfectly legit for them to say, no, thank you. These newer residential developments that this would heavily apply to are going to be denser. They are going to have, like you said, incentives to reduce the amount of parking spaces, to build higher, up, more dense. I am working with our state assembly member, Robert Rivas, in introducing a bill that would actually provide another incentive to reduce the amount of vehicle parking in exchange for bike parking, because there really is no bike parking in any of these bills, unfortunately. And I think one of the reasons why is that maybe it just hasn't stepped into the position like, okay, now it's time for us to go mandatory. People just aren't quite ready for it. But honestly, the majority of the people I talk to, they think it all is like me and like everybody else until we saw that development. We all thought, oh no, doesn't everybody put it in there? But they don't. So
We had training internally with planners.
Yeah.
Because there was some concern that we were requiring some items that aren't codified.
yeah.
So
So what this would do is this would immediately give everybody a one-stop shop of exactly objective standards. This is what we require. It's right here. It's in front of you. There's no going through anybody trying to change that. Two things that I will point out is that if you read in the whereas portion, it talks about how it'll supersede the bicycle and transportation plan from 2002, and another one that we should put in there is the downtown bicycle parking plan, because that contains certain standards in there. And then I'll let Gary talk about it, but once we are able to update that plan, then obviously whatever everybody decides, and planning, this will have to go to planning commission, this will have to be reviewed by the city attorney, this goes to city council, but this is where it starts. At that point, hopefully this will also guide the transportation plan, but at the same time, this is something that can be enacted within 30 days. It doesn't, obviously there's probably a little bit of staff cost associated with the reviewing and stuff like that, but this is something that can be put in place right now. There's no budget request to do a plan. It's not going to take community meetings and all this other stuff. It's what Gilroy wants. And like it says there in the code, if you have a local ordinance, then that trumps the state codes. So I'm open for any comments, any discussion, any suggestions that you guys see inside this ordinance.
I like the way it's written. It's very prescriptive. I've gone through it at length, and it would really set a standard for the cities in Santa Clara County, showing that Gilroy is taking that initiative ahead of state legislative bodies. Also, it's in line with the city's goals to be more business friendly. I know there's plans for a one-stop shop for permitting. It'd be great to actually have this resource and have it be as detailed as this. It's a good step forward, and I would be for adopting this ordinance.
Anybody else out there have any questions or comments?
I like how you were describing some of the past events where things would come before us because they were brought to us. Other times we would notice things and developments that we thought maybe something should come before us. And possibly something like this could help make that process more efficient. As you noted, you ended up finding out that there really is no teeth on a particular aspect of this.
Yeah, I like it. It makes it much more black and white, right? You have this is how many you have to have. It's not like, well, no, we're going to have this. We were thinking about having a bike rack or whatever. So it just basically defines exactly what you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And then we're basically mirroring what other cities are starting to do as well. It's not just, oh, we're going to do just throwing stuff out there. So it's good.
Any members from the public that wish to comment? Seeing none. Okay, so if nobody has anything else back here, the next step would.
So I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
So this process that's been used to draft this ordinance is highly irregular.
Mm-hmm.
Commissions don't draft ordinances, staff draft ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
So This is wonderful. It's a start in terms of drafting some language that we can consider. You guys can go ahead and approve the ordinance or the language this evening. We'll take it under advisement consideration, but we're not in a place right now where we can carry something forward in terms of recommending anything to commission or council in terms of this. This needs some evaluation. This needs some weighing out. We need to look and see if this conflicts with anything else. This needs some work. This isn't just something we can just move forward without a full vetting of what this language actually says. This is not within our work plan like we talked about. This is not within the council's priorities. This is not within anything where we have time to really process this right now. So it's a wonderful idea. This is something I'd like to consider as a global thing once we have a bicycle master plan that we move forward, when we have an opportunity to look at all the city's ordinances and make them all bicycle friendly. But carrying this forward separately as a commission-led item, like I said, is not the typical way things get done. And so, wonderful idea, wonderful concept. I commend you on this. I'd like to support you on this, but I have no idea how far this can go past you guys supporting this. It's like a letter of support. You guys could put this forward, but I don't know where it goes from here. I can't guarantee it goes to the commission. I can't guarantee it goes to council. There's a lot of staff work that needs to happen past this language here that you're presenting tonight to get it to actually be enacted and codified. Okay?
Thank you.
So I don't want to get your guys' expectations that once you guys adopt it tonight, it just moves forward and gets adopted.
We're an advisory body.
You are.
You know, this is what we do,
You do.
and I commend Zach for actually writing a full
Absolutely.
ordinance.
Like I said, this is a
I don't know
great
if
start.
anyone on this commission was expecting it to pass like that.
Right.
I think it's about servicing it, getting discussion,
Okay.
talking to the city
It's
about
a
it,
great start.
and if it does come down to it, a ballot measure and have the citizens vote on it.
Yeah.
That would probably be the last card.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just want to set expectations for everybody, so everybody knows where we're at. Okay.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, what I'll need is basically just a motion to recommend approval of the bike parking ordinance, and then I'll take it from there.
I'll make a motion to approve the bike ordinance.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. And thank you for coming. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, so let's go back to the top. We're going to go under item 8A, old business, Safe Routes to School update. Commissioner Sean Reedy.
Okay, let's see, I believe I mentioned in our last meeting a couple of projects. I will mention them again, but I will not be providing, an in-depth report at this point because that's not where we are with them. First project is that there had been some participation by commission members and city staff, city council members, school district officials on trying to make sure with Alexander Station opening that kids would be supported in safely walking or biking to Elliott Elementary School. So I've been in the process of working with the new principal there and with Alexander Station, and actually I've checked in with Cannery Apartments to find out how many students are attending those Elliott School from those places. And it's a substantial number, about 45 from Alexander Station are attending Elliott. So we're working to see if we can get some walking groups, what we call walking school buses, formed to walk to Elliott School, either from those locations or from other ones. I met with the ELAC group today to try to get some support from them, because if no one steps forward as a community parent volunteer, then what actually ends up happening there will be minimal. But Commissioner Hilton was there today also, and I would say there was a pretty good attendance at that meeting, and people did seem, glad that they were being provided support. Some questions did come up from the community. I had informed them of several changes that I've either heard while sitting up here, or from engineer Neuron Ban, or from Gary, about projects happening in the area of Elliott Elementary School. And I told them about that the sidewalks and curb ramps were planned to be improved, that the speed limit had been reduced, that speed limit was reduced on Chestnut, I believe. They were asking specific to the plans with sidewalks about an area of sidewalk right near the school, near East Street. The sidewalk approaching the school from East Street on Old Gilroy. There's a part that is near an apartment complex that is not marked in any way that it will be planned to be fixed. So I wasn't clear on the exact details if we know if that might be fixed under a CD community block grant or if there's been any approach to the apartment complex about possibly participating in the sidewalk program to fix that. I don't know if you know anything about that, Gary.
No,
to answer
we
right
haven't
now.
done any outreach to any sidewalk folks lately. We do have a CDBG project out of the street right now. It's for curb ramps in that area, but it's not for sidewalk gap closure on Alexander, I believe, near 8, but not in the area I believe you're talking about.
Right. So we could see when we looked, and I heard that there were improvements in process.
Right.
It did not seem that the specific one that was asked about by the public was in the plans. So thank you for clarifying. We are planning to make sure the school has a walk and roll day the first Wednesday of March 4th, and supporting that. I don't think I have any other questions or comments about the stuff going on at Elliott School. I do. One, they mentioned at Forest and Old Gilroy and that is one of the routes that might end up happening if we get walking groups going. They might go by that intersection. It's definitely where pedestrians do tend to walk on the way to school. Some of them come through there. They mentioned that there's flooding in any of the rainstorms, and one of them was under the impression that markings had been made many, many years ago to possibly do something about that, but that it still continues to flood. The other project is at Luigi Aprea School. We've been working with school district officials and Naran Than to, as part of a larger issue going on where Antonio Del Bono School is closing, many of the students from there will be going to Luigi Aprea, and so there's concern about how that traffic, the vehicle traffic that will be produced, will impact Luigi Aprea safety for driving and walking and biking around the school. So we worked together to discuss that, and Naran came to a meeting this previous Friday with some different possible options of plans to support, short-term solutions by August when school opens again and those additional students are there, how they might be able to improve the flow of traffic around the school. We're not ready at this point to share those plans and share the whole project, but perhaps in a month or two, I would imagine. A small piece of that is that public health is working to have a pop-up demonstration happen to get the public, to get the community members and parents of the school really enthusiastic about feeling like they have ownership over making improvements. So hopefully that will encourage them to really start walking and biking, because if they don't increase the walking and biking at that school, we won't be able to build our way out of the issues that are going to be happening. And so I've been working to help to, use city's staff's time minimally while still making that piece happen that really will help with community engagement. Any comments that you would like to make about it, Gary?
No, and that, at this point, we've reviewed Luigi Aprea. We've talked about circulation plan. So I believe Neuron's working with folks on that.
Only thing is that there will be room in some phone conferences leading up to the pop-up demo event that will happen probably towards late March for additional commissioners to participate in phone conferences or possibly participate in the pop-up demo. But we would need to be cautious if there started being more than 2 of us involved, how we behaved at certain meetings and phone conferences. I've let Patrick know about the events because he's a parent of the school.
It's not necessarily how you behave, but how many people behave,
Right.
how many people attend.
Well, there's certain things that possibly someone could be in attendance in addition, but then we need to be cautious about what we then do. Those are my main Safe Roads to School updates, other than that we're still working on Measure B education encouragement plans as a separate agenda item to possibly maintain some of the stuff we were used to seeing the last few years as far as education and encouragement.
Anybody else have any comments to add? Any members from the public that wish to comment? All right. So next up is item 8B, General Plan Advisory Committee update. Commissioner Chad Reeder.
Yes, so we did not have a meeting on December 12th. It was really planned, but we did have one on Thursday, which was January 23rd, 2020. And it's essentially, it looks like it will be our last GPAC meeting. The big thing we discussed is, I believe it's a state bill, I don't know which number it is, but equity and engagement workshop was required. So basically, the state, I believe it's state, Gary, you may know more about this too, but the state defines areas of the counties and cities that are people potentially who are less served by resources and city resources. And so they have it's required that this workshop was put on and ask some key questions. It's kind of 3 major questions. And again, they went through this pretty fast. And, I'm not a planning expert by any means, but and so generally what it was is the map, and this is all downloadable off the internet too, off our website, the GPAC website. It's predominantly basically Monterey Street east, and so I think there was only 30 people that came to the workshop. It's something they did to ask them questions. Do you feel in your neighborhood, do you feel the air is dirty? In your neighborhood, do you feel the water is dirty? And in your neighborhood, do you feel like it's too noisy? And so, as you can expect, is the air too dirty? 68% said yes. Water's too dirty. 50% of people said yes. And then, is it too noisy? 70% of people said yes. There was some discussion that the questions are kind of guiding the response. Too dirty, too clean. You might have got a different answer. So, but a couple things. The thing was is that air dirty, so go saying you get extra dirt off 101. There's some comments, and then is the water too dirty? Some people said that their water's dirty, and then the question was, well, these people all in the city of Gilroy. Some said, yeah, they are, but then some people were saying they're all wells, so I'm not sure we have too many wells. People have wells at their property in the city of Gilroy. Right. And then it is too noisy. 7% said yes. Again, the majority of these people live close to train tracks. And by, I assume it's federal law that trains, every time they come to a train station, they have to honk their horns.
And every crossing.
And every crossing. And I don't know if you know that, but it's supposed to be Morse code for letter Q for the Queen. I know that because I was a train engineer. Rarely, they usually just blow it once. But these are some things that they had to, we had to bring in to create a managing environmental concerns, which was part of, I believe, gets incorporated into the GPAC. And so going forward, the state requires us now to, what are we going to do to help mitigate some of these concerns? And basically what they came up with is translations. So now implementation of Spanish translation at public meetings, which I don't think that's happening right now. The GPAC did have, if you come in, you actually put headphones on, and there'll be a translator there who can translate into Spanish.
Nice.
Community engagement programs. This is one I got excited about when I read it first, and then I realized we're not on it. Provide opportunities for City Council, Planning Commission, and city staff and residents to communicate and engage throughout the year. Examples: coffee with city leaders. It just says Planning Commission. It doesn't say all commissions. Because it could help maybe with our pop-up tent someday. We'll get it. Maintain a list of meeting facilities, identify plans, programs, initiatives, farmer market vendor resources, home retrofit program, sound wall feasibility analysis, career and job fair. Those were what they came up with. And they actually had a chance to, we do it now, do it from 2023 to 2027 or 2018 to 2040 sort of thing. Right? So that was pretty much majority of the 2 hours at our meeting we talked about. So now it is the general plan. There's still, I believe, staff is sitting with staff right now to do some, because there are still some tweaks that need to be done. I did ask. I have not read the whole thing yet. I'm sure Gary's read it many times.
3 times.
And it's very thick. And unfortunately, I don't have an electronic copy for searchability. But I did say, talk to Stan, and he says it's in there. I didn't see it again. I will keep looking until I
You said
find
it was
it.
on the website.
Excuse me.
You said it was on the website, or did you?
I have not seen it on the
Distributed
website. It was
before.
mail. I got a packet in the mail. It's a good inch and a half thick. But looking for complete streets, because that was one of the reasons we said is complete streets is a city council recommendation, and they said once the GPAC gets reopened, let's put it into the GPAC. Stan says it's in there because there's other things that the city council has voted on that when the GPAC gets reopened, they'll put it in, supposedly put it in. So my homework is to make sure I can find it.
Yeah.
So that's basically. I won't bore you anymore. The GPAC, unfortunately, there's not a lot of pedestrian or cycling stuff in here. I mean, one thing I did, I brought up multiple times is that it is the bike plan, trail master plan, that defines, GPAC just says you should have one, but actually it's when we do it here, trails or whatever, like that's what the general plan says you need to follow the criteria, so it's kind of nice.
The general plan also says you shall have a circulation element. So we'll be working on that next. We'll bring that back for review here.
All right, perfect. Any questions?
No. Any members from the public that wish to comment? Seeing none. Anyone back here? Good. All right. Thank you, Chad. Next up is Measure B, Education and Encouragement. I don't have any updates, but I think Gary has an update.
Yeah. So the draft Measure B E&E program was submitted to BTA, and we got comments back. In general terms, and the document was shared in your agenda packet this evening. Between the time it went out, the packet went out, and tonight's meeting, we did get comments back from Nicole He with BTA that I wanted to share with you this evening. And over the next month, what we'll do is we'll be responding back to BTA, but I believe we'll probably be needing some input from the commission here because a lot of these E&E items are going to need BPAC input and volunteer activities as well. In general, they said some of the project goals are too generic, and we would like to see more measurable and project-specific goals. Many activities are grouped into big categories, but we suggest you separate them out with their own project proposed metrics. The plan proposes many activities, which is great. However, it may require significant staff time. It would be good if we could explain further and set expectations for activities and actions within the 2-year timeframe. We also needed clarifications on the community bike walk counts project. And then please see attachment for details. So the attachment they provided was an actual Word document that was marked up. So we can go ahead and provide this to the commission for further discussion, either in the interim between meetings, or we can have a special item at the next meeting where we can discuss this further based on the interest of the commission.
Thanks, Ron. I'd like to see the document.
Absolutely. Okay. I can forward that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we would love to see that. I agree with all of the comments you received. I believe the way this became written the way it was us trying to look at what had been put out by BTA and trying to guess what formats they would most appreciate. Yeah. And I figured that we would need to do some redrafting for as far as our advisement, and then further some communication back and forth with you and you with BPA before we can really figure out what we're going to be doing.
So let me propose this. Let me send this out to you, and next month I'll bring this back and we'll have an item-by-item discussion and get feedback, and then we can redraft it and send it back to BTA.
Cool. Sounds good. Anybody else have anything to discuss? Okay. Any members from the public that wish to comment? Since we're talking about the only thing I want to bring up is that since we haven't met since right before Thanksgiving, 2 events that we attended. I'll let Patrick has one that he'll talk about later, but one I wanted to bring up. It was the first ever turkey trot that was held down at the sports park by Las Madres of Gilroy. Myself, Chad came out, Patrick was there, kids were there. Can anybody guess how many participants they had? Over 200. So
I had at least one.
yeah, the point I want to drive home is that, and this is something that I learned at the bike summit this year, so it all ties back to our opportunity to train. One of the biggest things I pulled back from there: don't throw a party without a community-based organization. Just don't do it. Otherwise, it's you and your own silo talking to each other, going, "This is gonna be a great party, right?" You're like, "Yeah, but who's coming?" Well, I invited everybody. Okay, well, so that right there just blew my mind when the numbers came out. They took a chance. They organized it. They said, "Let's try it." They are a community-based organization, and they rocked it.
If you build it, they will come.
So kudos to them for doing that. And that's the only, we had one other Measure B community engagement event that Patrick went to, and he'll talk about it in his commission stuff. Okay, so moving on. Item D, Bicycle Pedestrian Commission Monthly Award nomination. This is a time for us to nominate somebody for the February award.
I have 2 people in mind. I'd like to do a combined award. I'd like to nominate Gary Heap and Neuron
Ooh.
for their significant contributions to the City of Gilroy and the Disability Commission. That would be my recommendation.
I would second that. I was brainstorming on the way here what we were going to do, and I have some future items in mind. And I know we shy away from trying to congratulate each other or even city staff, but I was thinking, if not for a monthly award, possibly consider people like that for one of the yearly things that happens, because they've really done a great job of doing their best to support the efforts that we put forward. They've done their best to support, given their limited staff time.
So we got a motion, we got a second. All in favor? Aye. Put it on Neuron's calendar.
I'll make sure he's here.
Next up is, let's see, so we're gonna skip, we already went over 9A. We'll do 9B, select chair for 2020. So this is something annually done by every commission or committee. And so I'll open up the floor for nominations for chair.
I nominate Zachary Hilton. You're the clear leader of this commission at this time. For as long as you're on this commission, you have my vote.
I agree, I second
I'll accept it.
Yeah, third.
I'll accept it. I enjoy being in this position, and I appreciate everybody's support. And it's nice to see Sean back for another 4 years too, and so we can all rock it out for 2020. So I'd accept it. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. So item 9C, select vice chair for 2020, and I'll again open up the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Patrick Flop.
I second that.
There we go. Do you accept?
I accept.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Patrick Flop, Vice Chair 2020. Next up is item 9D, website updates. Moving along with the procedures that we had, I'll let Commissioner Patrick Flott take it, and then we have them all listed down here. to try to make it easy for everybody to understand the updates we're doing, but he's going to go over it too.
So using the agreed upon process of my mocking up a template of the city provided website and submitting that in a physical copy to Neuron for his own implementation, I vote that we add the following new additions. One would be a public works highlight section. It will show off the projects that we've been involved with that Gary and team have taken to fruition, and I believe the public should have more visibility into that. Also, I want to remove the monthly award photo. It's too much staff time, and if anyone wants to know, they can follow our minutes or any other avenues towards that.
Just at the point where Miran and I are going to get to have our picture on there.
You would like to show that to everybody.
Also, I'd like to finalize the SRTS statement and add an updated bike map, add the first and current SRTS bike parking summary, update Sean Reedy's term date, and update the chair and vice chair. So that would be the totality of the requests for this website iteration.
And Neuron has a copy of the updated bike map that I looked over too. And so, I mean, obviously once it's updated, Patrick can let everybody know, and then you can see the upgrades that they did. They added over 6 miles. I had to convert that because I know you guys talking about linear feet, but 6 miles in a year is amazing of infrastructure, and it's all infrastructure, off street, bike routes, and bike lanes.
Bike facilities on every single road we paved.
Wow. Love it.
Yeah.
I finally saw the flashing signs over near IOF on my way here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's made downtown Monterey Street much more safe. People take notice. They're actually looking to the left and the right. It's really made a difference when I can see.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
Just if I could, could you talk a little bit, there was one of the items you listed and you went through pretty fast, a section indicating some of the improvements or enhancements we're doing on a monthly basis or regular basis?
No, all time. So projects that have come to this commission for evaluation and commentary that you have put towards fruition or actively working on. Sort of a staff appreciation subsection.
Okay. I'm not sure what form that would take.
Really basic form. It would just be another heading like what's already present and just a list of clickable links that would go to the city supply locations.
Like stuff that would be deep in like council reports that can pull out.
Okay. I'm just trying to find where that would link to. Because
Probably
we don't
PDF
have,
files, and if there were images available, that as well.
I'm not sure that we have a really great source for those.
You do. The city has a Facebook page that they have a lot of content on.
There we go.
We can have a direct link there.
Okay.
The monthly newsletters that we get
That as well.
showcases some of.
Yeah, what you guys have
So they're
done.
all
You guys are more
public
tech
domain.
into it than I am. That's fine. I mean, the city's website eventually will be great in terms of our public works and our engineering website.
yeah.
We're in the process of updating that, and it's just not where it needs to be right now to be able to do something.
It's just another useful tool in our public engagement to let people know to go to our city supply website and see these awesome projects.
And
I appreciate it as
Yeah, we appreciate you.
sources can visually.
any members from the public that wish to comment? Go ahead, Lionel, you want to say something?
Sorry, so that the monthly award picture is going away, can that be showcased in our Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's basically what it was. It was too hard to try to be like, hey, and by the way, can you update the photo? And because sometimes there's nothing to update on the website, and so it's better. Like now, we kind of like waited for a moment, and then okay, update it all. It's too much more monthly stuff to do.
Sure.
And when we found out, the last person that was up there was in September, and none of us were paying attention. So yeah, it's just too much.
But not too much for the Facebook.
No. That's easy. Okay. Any members from the public that should comment? Seeing none. Okay, so we just need a motion to approve. All motion to approve the website updates.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next up is bike rack decal flyer. Commissioner Patrick Club.
So we've been doing public engagement at various events throughout last year, and it would be nice to have a professional looking flyer that references city assets in a variety of ways. One, in a visual way, where I know exactly what I can buy, a bike decal on a certain available rack downtown. We may have more of them in the future, so it'd be nice to have an asset that is extant and consistent, and also colorful, and it makes sense. So this one has the ability to find out where to drop it off at the city, email the city for more information on getting a bike decal, or by using a smartphone, simply scanning a QR code and going directly to the application form. So I have had a contractor do a mock-up for a cost of $63, and I will propose that we use the public bike funds to cover this cost so that we can not only fill the remaining 2 spots that are existent now, but others in the future as well. I would like to see them at other parks and the other areas that go under development. So that would be the proposal as it stands. And if you want to see the flyer, it's in the agenda.
And one of the things we approved in the consent calendar tonight was a application for the bike rack in front of the Arts Center. So that's another $350 into the public bike fund. And to tie that back, the reason why we're doing more of this is so we can have something physical to hand out. But at the same time, that through community outreach on social media, that drew in that application and the funds coming into this account. So you can see the door in, door out. Yeah, so all we're looking for is, and we have funding in the public bike fund for this. Just need a motion to approve the new flyer and $63 from the public bike fund.
Make a motion to approve the flyer, bicycle rack decal flyer and the $63.
Let's second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Next up is letter of support for SB 50 for the bike parking minimums. Just a brief message. This is just more about really trying to get the conversation started at the more like advocacy level for local governments and state governments to really think about when you're going to be talking about how you're building communities that are going to be walkable and bikeable, that you actually provide a place for people to park their bikes. You know, we have e-bike parking that's coming out. The state of California is now giving out vouchers, not just for get your clean air car or your clunker, but to actually buy an e-bike. People are riding cargo bikes. We're going to start building denser. So that's really what this addresses, is trying to get that word out of having some sort of bike parking minimums. So that's it. If any other questions, any public comment? Yeah, you got to come up here. We've been told to follow the rules. Please, Jack. Thank you. Hi.
Been my resident for a long time. I noticed in last night's council consent calendar, there was a letter of opposition to SB 50. So if this is the same SB 50, is it appropriate for you to send a letter of support behind their letter of opposition?
Yeah, they were invited to come tonight too. But one thing they did not address was anything to do with bike parking. So that's really what we're trying to advocate for. Thank you. Anybody back here? All right, so I just need a motion to support.
Motion to support.
And I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up is the letter of support for notice of the 30-day public comment period. This is something that I actually found on our city's website. And Gary might have more information. I think this is the sidewalk gap closure that he's talking about. See if I can find it. Nope, it's not. Oh yeah, it's around on this one. So there's a 30-day public comment period that's open right now. It's for CDBG block grant money, and this is money that wasn't appropriated last year, and they are going to be using the fund to fund the 2020 sidewalk gap closure and curb ramp improvement project for a total of $544,000. And so what I'll do is basically just draft the same letter of support that we normally do for creating walkable and bikeable communities, and then I'll bring that back. I don't have a letter to attach here, but I can bring it back and put it inside of our consent calendar next month, so you guys can see what it is. And then that way it'll be permanently attached to the record. All right. Cool. Okay. So just need a motion to support the letter.
Motion to support.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Next up, correspondence. If anybody doesn't have any questions on any of those, then we'll move on to oral reports by commission members, and I'll let Sean Reedy go first.
I'll pass for now. Pause for a moment and think if I have anything additional that I already shared.
Okay. Commissioner Flo.
Okay, I have a two-part oral report, one on business of this commission and one concerning my new role at Caltrain. I'll start off with my oral report that has to do with this commission. I was involved with a community engagement event representing the BPAC at the Gilroy Library's Bike Fix-It Day on January 18th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The event was a great success, and we reached total capacity for fixing bikes within an hour of the event starting. Community engagement was also very high, and I passed out many of my new business cards. Thanks, Gary. And informed around 40 people of our meeting date and times. Some even said they might make an effort to attend future meetings. I would like to formally thank library staff member Ann Shan for her efforts in coordinating with our commission and library staff to make this event a success it was. I also, as Sean Reedy mentioned in his previous report on Safe Schools, will plan on attending a Parents Club event at Luigi Aprea on February 26th at 7 p.m. I will also be handing off SRTS assets, which include banners, paperwork, safety equipment, and SRTS branded t-shirts, which I collected previously at an SRTS presentation put on last year by 7th Clare County staff member Lisa Arkin. Now, I have an update from Caltrain. Since being appointed to Caltrain Citizen Advisory Committee, I've attended 2 meetings, one on December 18th and another on January 15th. At the December meeting, I advocated for the Caltrain Bicycle Advisory Committee to present to the CAC on a quarterly basis prior to the formal presentation to the official Joint Powers Board. This was accepted by the chair of the CAC, Ryan Shaw, and will be formally put to a vote at a future meeting. I find great synergy between the CAC and Gilroy's BPAC. Gilroy will become a key player in the future of the Caltrain line, as Phase 2 of CalMod, otherwise known as the Caltrain Modernization Program for Line Electrification, will bring enhanced service to Gilroy. This means up to 5 daily to and from service lines with new electric carriages via Caltrain, and up to 5 daily to and from service lines with BTA if so needed. This is part of the agreement that was made with the Union Pacific Rail Line, which owns the right-of-way from 2.5 miles outside of Caltrain's Tinian Station, and has joint sharing with the BTA until the Gilroy Station. I will continue to advocate for Gilroy and South County service enhancement and improvement. However, I am aware of the loss-making activities of Caltrain and the added burden the CalMod program is adding to their cash flow and balance sheet. I have also put forth agenda items that will enhance visibility and accessibility of the CAC for citizens and riders alike. Such agenda items include: 1, business cards and email addresses that align with Samtrans, the operating partner of the JPB, should be provided to all CAC members. 2, social media outreach in the form of brief 2 to 3 minute video updates on CAC agenda items posted on Caltrain social media channels. And 3, a training budget for CAC members to attend and network at industry events. Lastly, I have 2 important notes from the materials provided at 2 CAC meetings I've attended thus far. 1, the SFBPAC, the San Francisco Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, is formally promoting and lobbying the JPB for reconsideration of current plans regarding the proposed bike layouts on the new electric trains that will be deployed under the CalMod program. The chair of the SFBPAC, Bert Hill, is requesting the JPB to implement a train layout with 4 separate bike carriages encompassing 80 bike spaces per train at a ratio of 8.4 seats to 1 bike space. The current accepted proposal by JPB is 74 spaces per 2 carriages. 2, according to the latest JPB Comprehensive Financial Report for 2019, the JPB stated that annual passenger counts saw 5,506 bike boardings on an average weekday. This represents a 7-point decrease from fiscal year 2018. It's important to note this because the above mentioned sentiment from the BPAC is directly targeting what they see as a major issue, and that I've confirmed internally at Caltrain as well. Riders don't bike to Caltrain as often as they'd like to due to the assumption and often the harsh reality that bike spaces are too few on existing carriages.
Bumped.
And that is my role.
Thank you, Patrick. Next up, Lionel Gonzalez.
I have nothing.
Okay, Chad Reeder.
Thank you, Patrick, for that. You probably know I ride Caltrain 5 days a week, and I ride my bike every day, and I see a lot of these issues. But I will say I get on Palo Alto before a lot more populous bike stations are stopped at. I'll have one. We have an update on our bike-friendly signs here. We have to find them all and locate them.
That's a really good question. They were, I know in November, they were picked up for installation. Let me just find out where
I haven't seen it. Maybe even some of the saws. I haven't seen it.
I can't tell you they are. Let me find out.
Just since Patrick was talking about Caltrain and bikes, I will mention that I don't think that we necessarily need to share the flyer because it's specifically for county employees, but Santa Cruz County, it was mentioned in the minutes from the BPAC meeting that there will be expanded adult bicycle education run by BTA. One thing that's currently happening is there will be bicycle trainings for adults. So people, most likely people have been trained in LCIs in a previous campaign that public health work with BTA will then be able to train other adults on some more basic cycling safety classes. One of those will be in Gilroy in February. Like I said, specifically for county employees, and it will be advertised to those employees.
Cool. Couple quick updates on the dirt pump track at Christmasville Park. We had 2 meetings over the holidays with city administrator and parties from the environmental side and with the Garcias that I sat in on. What we're looking for right now is ways to mitigate 2 things that were brought up for the environmental. And one of those is mitigating the dust that comes from moving dirt around. And obviously changing like places or whatever, and then water runoff, not disrupting the natural flow of the land. These are 2 things that everybody has to deal with. The only thing is that we're trying to look for other formats that have already been in the public view of cities that have like had the funding to go through full environmentals. So we can try to mirror off that and see if we can work with the folks around here that that deal with that, and that's their specialty. Because obviously a community-based organization does not have $250,000 or more to do a full environmental work to put dirt on dirt. It's just not going to happen. So that's the latest update on there. Hopefully I'll have more later. I don't know if any of you have ridden out on Hecker Pass, State Route 152 between Watsonville Road and Santa Teresa lately, but it's looking awesome. And the trees are being cut back. We're getting, it's very rideable. They had to stop work on a couple of them. They know that they're historic trees and they got to figure out the right way to trim them and bring them up. They're completely 100% aware of all the development that's going on out there, including that bike bed trail. So they should be back out. What they said is in the middle of February. And then it's just weather related and crew availability to finish up the work. But it looks great if anybody hasn't been out there. I hope to have more information next month. It doesn't sound like Bay Area Air Quality Management District has got the vouchers ready to be able to give out to support the Assembly Bill 400, which allowed people that are turning in their old clunkers to get an e-bike. So I haven't seen anything come out about that yet. And those were specifically for communities of concern, which is kind of like what you're talking about for the GPAC. So that's the term they used, and that obviously we qualify for that here in Gilroy. I had the opportunity to be a part of a bike donation from a citizen to a Solar Sono middle school kid right before the Christmas break. This was a great story that I found online. A woman was looking to give a BMX bike to the community, didn't know where to do it. quickly brought her up to speed on our connections we've had with the school district. I reached out to the counselors at Solar Sono Middle School, and within about a week, they found a student to be able to give the bike to who was having trouble with transportation on getting there. This woman bought him a bike lock, fixed the bike up, bike tires, and wrote a nice kind note. Basically said that if he ever gets a point in his future where he's able to give it back, that he pay it forward. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of that, and Sean was out there with me. Like I alluded to earlier, I participated in Assembly District 30, Robert Rivas's There Ought to Be a Law. I've been heavily pitching the bike parking, as you guys all know, and so my idea for bike parking, which I'll go into it probably next meeting, beat out everybody else's ideas for a law. And so I'll have the opportunity, before, the language already went in last week, and hopefully going to have the opportunity in the next 2 weeks to be able to walk on the assembly floor and actually turn in a bill with Robert. And so I'm super stoked to be a part of that. And I'll have more information about that for you guys next time. The asphalt art grant, we talked about our last meeting, that's been turned in, it's been approved. I haven't heard any updates, but I can give you some stats because they're looking for community engagement before and after. So the initial community engagement that we got off Facebook, which was pretty awesome when we just talked about what we were going to do in that area that we were trying to activate and the partners that we have in the community to do this. And we had over 2,000 people reached. Just on one photo that we shared with almost 500 engagements, which was pretty awesome. And then for me on my personal page on Twitter, for some reason, it hit up for a lonely little, guy down in Gilroy. About 2,600 people actually paid attention to it, and over 150 were writing about it. So public art just draws in more people than you think. And it truly is starting to become like a destination. Go here to this town because they have this from this local artist. And on February, I heard this last night, on February 18th, the Gilroy City Council will be having a meeting with Gilroy Gardens, a public meeting. It'll probably be held here. I urge you all to go. They're going to be talking about their Gardens Master Plan. And they will be talking about the future of the gardens, and they will be talking about the Hillside Adventure Park that came through here that we wrote a letter of recommendation for as well. And then two things I learned while I was out there about in the city: old intersections that don't have the video camera detection system up on top of the signals. That means that they have a loop system underneath ground, and if it's not catching you on the loop, then that won't be upgraded until the intersections or the roadwork is updated. That's what I was told. So obviously, old school way, if you want to get across, and there's several of these areas, if you want to get across, if you're on Prince Valley and you want to get across 10th Street and go over it, go hit the pedestrian activator. And so parlaying that into the pedestrian activator, I learned that that those that don't have the countdown, that those are not upgraded on a one-for-one basis. If somebody finds one, they're actually going to be updated in conjunction with paving projects. So just another note to think about when you're out and about there. And that's all I have. Next up is staff comments.
So, excuse me. So I was just actually looking at our CIP list, because we do have a project on here for traffic signal upgrade citywide. And what that project will do will be to look at our 30 some odd signals we have throughout the city, evaluate them for systems upgrade, whether it's controller upgrades on a citywide basis, detector cameras or detection upgrades on a citywide basis, head countdown heads on a citywide basis, etc. And then identify individual funding, individual projects to look at for funding. So that we do have a project that will be looking at exactly what you're talking about in terms of upgrading our different citywide signal projects. So to that topic, we are actually putting together our CIP program for fiscal year 21-26 right now. We're in the process of identifying projects and prioritizing our projects. We are bringing to the BPAC next month in February the projects we'll be considering for this next 5-year cycle. We're not going to be bringing all 125 projects to you. What we'll be doing, though, is bringing the projects that are relevant to your scope, if you will. So it'll be everything bike and pedestrian related. So it's everything having to do with bikes and trails and markings and safe routes to school and paving, because we're markings with those projects, and signal improvements and curb ramps improvements and safe routes to schools, and everything that we can think of that's has something to do with bike and ped improvements and facilities. So there's a large number of projects that are on that list, and we'll be bringing those forward for review for you next month. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the fact that we've talked about process and procedure with this group, and that every month you put on the consent calendar approval of support letters. And in most cases, those support letters have already gone out. So it's it's like the cart before the horse. You guys are approving something after something has already gone out. Normally, something would be drafted, you guys would review it as a body, approve it, and then it would go out. But in most cases, when you guys get requested for an approval letter or a support letter, the timing is such that you don't have time to actually then agendize it, review it, you've missed the deadline. So what I would recommend is that you guys come up with some kind of a standard format. Either BPAC, support, these types of things, and have a list of the things you would support. Safe routes to school projects, bike projects, whatever it is within your purview that you would support, so that when Zach gets those kinds of requests or Sean gets those kinds of requests and there's an interest or a need to write the letter, then you're writing it based on something that you guys have approved. So you would bring a template that would have a standard format and a bucket of things that you have already pre-approved, get that standard format and letter and list of things approved as a standard. And then you guys could go ahead and draft letters when you get the requests, then bring them as consent items. And then go ahead and approve those consent based on a document that's already been approved in concept.
Is this feedback you've received from the city itself, or is this coming from your point of view?
We recently went through some training, and so I'm going to be trickling out little bits and pieces of wisdom that I've learned.
Yeah, we love.
And so, it's something like that is key for us to be following process and protocol, and so it would be helpful for us to follow those kinds of procedures. And doing stuff after the fact is not one of those processes that makes sense.
Okay, would you be guiding us in helping make the proper changes, or are you leaving this for us?
I would ask you guys to draft it. I mean, Zach has written a number of different letters. I'm sure he's got his own template. I would just ask, draft a template. Let's put it on the agenda and approve something as a standard format. And then you guys could write it as a group if you want. Approve something, agree to something, and then let's come up with a format so that you guys can follow that, and we can do it as a.
That's a good idea.
I mean, it makes sense because like the CDBG monies, that's the public comment period is going to end by the next meeting.
Yeah. And I just sort of not to be able to write.
Where I just said, okay, I'll basically use like what we've used probably dozens of times already. That makes sense. Everybody understand that? Okay.
So should we bring a motion to vote on making templates, or is it something we can just?
Can't do that because that's not on your agenda for tonight, so you can't make a motion for something.
No, not tonight.
But for
So it's something
future,
we should do.
so for a future agenda item, maybe even as early as next month, if you guys are ready, maybe you want to agendize
We can do that
something
next
as a.
We'll just include it inside the strategic plan and work plan that we have to do in
If you guys
February
want to do
anyway.
a work plan, that would be great.
Yeah, streamlining.
Yeah, because we have to update that anyway, so we might as well just do it at the same time.
That's great. It's a great idea, and it saves us the 2 votes.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
That's the update for today.
Okay.
Do you guys have any other questions?
No.
That's fine.
The CIP thing is keeping us very, very busy right now. with the 100 and some odd projects we have. So it's a full 5-year CIP, and it's the first year that we've actually developed a CIP for the city. So we're making a lot of stuff up as we're going along. So we're hoping to have a real strong document when all said and done.
Okay.
Thanks for the updates.
Agenda items for next meeting. The only ones that I have, the standard ones, is to go over our 2020 strategic plan and work plan. We normally do that in February. Well, actually, we normally do it a little bit later, but the council is not changing their goals until after this next election. So we have plenty to basically work off of, figure out, take some stuff off, add some stuff on. So if you guys want to get that done in February, might as well get it done in February.
Yeah.
Sound good? So we'll do that in the next meeting. And then, do you want me to mention Elisa, or did you want to? So Elisa from Public Health wants to come back and basically give a Safe Process School high school update, and I think she's bringing some of the high school students with her. And then hopefully we might be able to also hear travel count tallies from the beginning of the year. Would that be able to be a part of it? The stuff that SVBC did in September?
As far as data, we'll have to see if something is ready or if it needs to wait another month or two.
So we'll try to get that if we can, but basically to be able to come and talk about the high school projects. Yeah, that's what I have.
So 2 other items for the agenda. Staff will be presenting the CIP, which could be a lengthy conversation, and then we'll also be going through the BTA E&E program and working through item by item on that as well. So we've got those 2 items could take some time. So
Another thing, not for the next meeting, but what's the timing on the back-end ankle working pilot program?
That was something that the council wanted to put on the shelf until the council could consider it on their work plan for the year, and then that would trickle down to the BPAC for your work plan for the year.
Makes sense.
I think we'll also add another template for support from us, right? As Karen just said, to the agenda, and then you can remove the GPAC for whole business.
Take it off. Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else? Good?
Just one thing that Zach, you and I talked about at our agenda setting meeting, in terms of the commissioner updates, some of the commissioner updates, some of you guys have a lot of information that you're sharing, and it would be really helpful for the secretary and for the minutes that we're keeping if you were to put some of those notes in writing so that we could have them for the minutes. And then if you could, then you would be able to just go ahead and summarize those briefly in your conversations and in your reporting at the meeting itself. It'll keep the meeting shorter, and then it will provide more concise note-taking and concise recordation of your actual item. So if you would please consider that.
All right. So that's it. Meeting adjourned until February 25th at 6 o'clock. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. So that meeting is with Gilroy Gardens and City Council.
The 18th